Okay. Hi, everyone. Going to get started now. The session will be about an hour, but maybe might extend it to an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. You can jump out at any time. You don't have to attend. And it's being recorded, so you can watch it at a later stage. So if you need to go somewhere, that's not a problem. I will upload the video as soon as it is available to me, and then I'll share it in the chat. Okay. So before I get started, I know a lot of you want to be covering the CA. And sort of get shown what to do there. I'm doing an offline set of videos, and I don't want to have a live session for that right now. I'd rather have that perfectly curated for you and done in a certain way, so I know that you're not going to get any misinformation and you can rely on those videos. So I'm sort of putting a lot of priority on getting them done. And I'm not comfortable just jumping in and not being able to give you the answers right now. So I'd rather have everything prepped in a nice set of offline videos, and you can always watch those videos. And I'll be working on the weekend to get those done, and they should be up on Monday. Is there no audio? No, I see my microphone is coming through. Can the rest of you hear me? Yeah, okay. Just check your audio there, Martin. Maybe your speaker's off or the volume's just down. Okay, so I have asked for people, and I know it's sort of like a bit late notice when I asked for some suggestions, but I'm just going to be working through a carry on from where we left off last week. I think last week we just looked at module 1 mostly. I'd like to look at array methods now because I've still got questions coming in, and then maybe even jump into the other modules. But if there's other content that you would like me to cover in the session, please let me know. Maybe even small parts of the CA we can maybe even look at, but not sort of the entirety of the CA. That's going to be dedicated to another session. Okay, so yeah, if there's anything you want to ask, you can interrupt at any time. I'm not going to wait for questions until the end. Rather ask when it's relevant, like something we're talking about right now. Can you hear me yet, Martin? I guess you wouldn't be able to answer that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen and then we'll get started. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. I'm going to be using, I'm going down the lessons. I've got it up on my other monitor. You might see me staring up like that. That's just so that I can see my other monitor. And yeah, so I want to go over sort of some array methods. So that's I know that you're all going to be comfortable with, how to use these things. Because array methods especially are going to be incredibly important for you to know how to use. They will allow you to do really complex things. Yeah, that's quite a cool filter you got there. So they will allow you to do quite a few cool things. I think maybe his audio is glitching, so that's why it's coming through like that, like there's bit crunching or something happening. Maybe just say to him, you should try and just come back. Sorry, everyone. Okay, yeah, that was kind of cool. Okay, so where's my lessons? Okay, so so array methods are very, very important. I want to stress. I know that some of you might be looking at them and you'd be like, I don't know, if I want to keep learning about these, but they are incredibly important. And I know in the beginning, they take a lot to it takes a while to get used to them. But then after you've used them a few times, and then maybe even they say after a year of doing development, it becomes second nature. And then you always want to use them. You want to use them for everything. If you want to learn how to use array methods, I suggest doing things like, what do you call it? HackerRank and Code Wars. I would say Code Wars. Code Wars is probably, I'm not going to say it's the best one, but the way that you get the solutions at the end with Code Wars and then everybody's solutions being shown to you, it's a great learning environment for array methods. And there's even lessons there, grouped lessons for just completing them with array methods. So let me just quickly go there so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's called Code Wars. I think Nora should actually look at building its own tribe or whatever it is called on here. And yeah, you just do sort of coding exercises. But if you search for Code Wars array methods, I've never actually done these myself, but I know that there are these groups of collections. So there's one here, and it's 8 KU. So this is the easiest of them. And then you can go through and you can choose the ones that you want to do, and then you can use these as array methods. or try and practice using array methods. But what's really important is that when you finish this, at the end, after you've submitted your solution, they show you other people's solutions. And there you can see people are using one-liners and we don't recommend actually using those one-liners, but it teaches you another way of how you could have done it. And that's really important. So you can see sort of, it really sort of like your mind is like that explosion anime. You're like, whoa, I didn't know you can do all of this stuff. So this is, to me personally, I found that this was the best way to learn about array methods, was practicing these type of things. Okay, cool. Martin, can you? Okay, so this is Code Wars. We should actually look at actually joining, like creating our tribe. You can actually have a tribe here, and then everybody joins, and then it keeps track. And it's recommended to actually, if you do have the time, try and get some of these done every day or at least once a week, because it really does help you skill up. And when it comes to the best tech jobs where you're making like quite a few, I don't know what the like how to convert into the currency here, but your American jobs where you're getting like what is it, $300,000 a year or something like that, those jobs you need to know how to do lead coding, which is basically just getting good at the stuff. That's like the main barrier of entry, is getting really good at these, for those FANG-aligned jobs. And when I say FANG-aligned, that means Facebook, Google, and those types of jobs. Okay, cool. So let's actually start jumping into array methods. I'm going to just do the normal thing here where we're going to add our index.html. And we use an emmet to populate. Computer's a bit slow. Actually, maybe I need to save first. Yep. Okay, so when we're creating a new post, we'd have to have an image URL and not upload it. Okay, so that's a question from Harris. That is correct. It's not we're not submitting the image through the form. It's just a URL. So you would need to host it somewhere. But the benefit of that is that you could always just go and, you're probably gonna have to host it somewhere. You could always go and get an image from someone else that's hosting it, but that's maybe not recommended. It's probably going to end up breaking down the line. So I don't know where the best idea is to host yet. For that, we'll actually need to go and like speak internally about where to host, so that we're not going to have broken images in the future, because some providers won't want you to be using hot linking. But yeah, so it needs to be a link that's uploaded, not an image. But maybe we can look at adding Malta and then getting it to allow us to upload images as well. But we find that students generally struggle with that. That's why I think we're going with the URL approach this time around. Okay, so that'll mean you go to like ImageGur or somewhere and upload the image, and then you just use the link. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go and add a scripture. And if you have any questions like that, please let them come through, and I will try and answer them if I can. Okay, so we've got a script. Before I do anything else, I just want to write console log to make sure that it's running. And then we're going to go and import our script. An easy way is you just go script, go script, and then you can see the source. You just push tab and then script.js. Okay. And then we'll need to defer our script so that it's only going to load after our content is loaded, just in case we're actually going to do anything here. And then save, open with live server. Okay. So here it is. Yeah, let's just move this over. Okay, so we're running. Okay, so we're gonna look at some array methods. Yeah, we'll just start right off the top. And yeah, so I really enjoy array methods. You'll find that even if you start getting used to them, you'll really enjoy them. So I'm just gonna create a bunch of data here. So we're gonna have an array with like an ID, and let's just say there's a first name. So ID, and then let's just go with the first name. Okay, so got an array up, and then we're just going to go and copy this over and over. And the whole point is that we're going to use this data. And I'm just going to use the names that I see in chat here. So we've got Oliver, we've got Bitwe, got Paula, Marianne, Ola. And yeah, we're going to just leave it there. Okay, so we've got these sort of objects in our array. Okay. Now, if you wanted to just loop these, you would just go and use a for each, right? So the first way we can loop through something is we use a normal for each, or just a for loop. And we'll say myArray.length, and then r++. And we're going to console log myArray, and we're going to use the index. So I'm actually going to just change this variable. I'm going to push F2 here so I can just change the name. Okay, so we just changed it. I don't want to call it just R, I want to index. Okay, so we can now loop through this array, right? And then we can go and console log each of these items. This is your standard for loop. It's been used for many years, decades. This is still this is old school stuff, the way that we write for loops. Even our if statements, also like old school ways of doing things. And there's still good ways of doing things. I'm not, just because it's an older way doesn't mean that there's something wrong with it. I'm just saying that it's been around for that long. It's just that useful. So a for loop is good for when we want to loop through something and we want to go and do something with each item, right? So we can go and sort of modify the array, or we can do something for each time we're looping. Generally, you don't want to actually be modifying an array directly like this. That's called mutating. You'd rather create a new array and modify that. Because remember, we're passing by reference. Last time we spoke about passing by reference, where I showed you that if we pass an array into a function and we modify that, then the original array is going to get modified. And we can't have that because that leads to bugs. Okay, so a for loop lets you sort of loop through all of them. Okay, now there's syntactic sugar, which means it's just a neater way of writing it so that it's more sort of understandable as English, is you get for each. Okay, and then this is an array method. I'm supposed to actually put the array here. So I'm supposed to say myArray.for each. And then inside of here, we've got sort of a pattern of things that always occur. You've got your first item. Okay, so let's just call it element, because usually it's elements in an array. You've got your element. Then you've actually got your index. And note that when I'm actually typing this, it's actually let me actually start from the beginning. Sorry. And I'll show you what it's doing. So you can see it's actually highlighted the first parameter we want to put in. That's the first parameter. And that'll be our current element. They call it value. I'm just calling it element. Then you can see it's highlighted the next one. And it's telling us what it is, as well as what the type is. So this is the type. So index is going to be a number that's coming through. Then we've got the original array, okay, that comes through. This can be useful if you want to get the length of this array. You might want to do something based on the length. So you can use this to get the length of the array. That's sort of the only use case I really found for this. And that's that for this one, okay? So now inside here, we can console log. So I wrote a number here. This should be index. So we can now console log element index. Sorry, I'm actually going to do something better here. Sorry, I forgot to be in JS2, so I'm going to show you a trick here. I'm actually going to log an object, and then I'm just actually going to write the values. Okay, and I'll show you why in a moment. Doing it this way, it makes it very easy for me to see what information is getting logged. So I'm going to go and save this, and you can see now that it says element, index, and array, because basically what it's doing is we're creating an object that looks like this. And this is more of a debugging tip, which maybe I should have done in the debug section. But this is a very quick way of console logging with a key or like a label for what I'm dealing with. Otherwise, I would have had to gone like this. I would have had to say console log element, elements, then index, and then array, and then array. So let me just show you the two together. So I'll zoom out a tiny bit. So you can see, here is the, let me refresh, it's quite a mess. Take that out. So here is the one where we're actually logging the name. You can see it says element, then it says index, and then it says array. But it's a pain to write this out all the time. So what you could instead do is write it in an object like this, and then it's automatically giving you the actual, it's over here. It's giving you the key. So then you don't actually have to write this beginning name in. You can just log it as an object. So this is a really, really useful thing of debugging. I was quite stoked when I sort of just stumbled upon this. Quick way of debugging to know exactly what everything is. If you do need to say something, please make sure that you're writing it in Zoom. I'm not going to be able to see your stuff in Discord. Okay. Okay, so this is now once again a loop, just like this one. We loop, and this is also in our loop. So this is syntactic sugar for this. It's a neater way of writing it. There might be some other benefits, but it really is just, it's considered a neater way of writing it. At some workplaces, they might not want you to write for loops like this. They might want you to only use for each. It really depends on you. Like I still prefer using for. And I'm not saying you must prefer using it, just because I've started with for many years and I just prefer using it. But this is considered to be way more readable. Okay, so this is for when you want to do something and you want to modify each thing, or you want to sort of do something for each time there is sort of an element when you're looping. But you don't want to be modifying your original array once again. You know, this is just really for looping, this for each. It's only for looping. So the reason why I'm covering this is because we're going to look now at the other array methods, and there's a big difference between for each and map. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to do map here. Okay, so we're going to say my array dot map. And now we've got the exact same pattern here, where it's element. Well, first you've got this arrow function here, and there is your elements that go in here. Let me mention, though, that you can actually say function like this and have an anonymous function, because this is also an anonymous function. This is an anonymous function because it's got no name to it. And then you can have the same thing here, like element index array. But yeah, it's considered like, it's quite long-winded. If you compare this one to this one, it's a lot more long-winded. And doing the arrow function is actually really simple. I know people get scared of it. All you got to do is delete the function part and you put an arrow, and that's an arrow function. Okay. So now with the other array methods that include map, they work a little bit different. This is actually looping through each array item, and then you can, looping through the array. And it's going to iterate through the array. But it's not really advised to be modifying an original array, because like last time we discussed, you get that pass by reference, and then you're sort of messing up that original data source. So let's just say, and I often see it with the students, is that you might get a list of, it's when you have to search the guest houses and the hotels from the holidays, I think it's called. And then what you'll do is that you'll have your original array, but then when you filter it, you actually change your original array. So say we filtered it to just have Oliver here, and then we filtered it. So it's just showing that, but now we've lost our original data. How do we can't get our original data back. We have to now go back and refetch our data. So what you should be doing in that case is you should actually have something like filtered names. And then that would be this, and it's filtered now. So then we've just got that first one that's popped up. So that we haven't lost our original data source. We're going to use a separate array for when we're actually filtering, but then we keep our main data source untouched. It mustn't get manipulated, mustn't get mutated, mustn't get modified. So that's where there's like a danger, like an actual use, like a real proper production issue that pops up in between the NARF students, is they will try and they'll filter this original array so that all that data is gone, and then there's nothing they can do because they've lost that data. So when it comes to for each, you don't want to actually be manipulating it. If you need to manipulate data so that it's a one-to-one relationship, that is sure. Okay, cool. We did do destructuring last time, but I will cover it again. I'll actually destructure in here as well in a moment. So when it comes to map, this is now going to have, okay, let me write this first part here. So we're going to call this new array. Okay, so the first thing when it comes to map is that when we're working with our array here, we are going to be returned a new array. Okay, that's the difference between for each and map. Okay, they're both going to loop through every single element, but this map one is going to give us a new value back, and it's going to be a brand new array. So if you ever need to go and sort of modify an array so that you're actually going to end up with a new array, that's when you're using map. Okay, if you're going to be just sort of looping through a bunch of elements and then sort of handling something for each time, but not manipulating the array like a normal for loop, that's when you use for each. Okay, so for each is when you're trying to do a for loop, but it needs to be sort of like a cleaner way of writing it. But if you need to actually start modifying elements, then we actually want to use a map. Okay, now one of the important things about map is that it has to be the same number of elements. It's a one-to-one map. Okay, so one-to-one map. So when I mean a one-to-one map, I mean that if there are 5 elements here, we are going to get 5 elements back. Even if you return false, you're still going to get 5 elements back. Okay. So the way it works is that with all of these array methods, excluding the for each one, if we return true, then we generally keep it inside of the array or it gets added or something. If we return false, then it gets excluded. But in map, it's going to have an exact same representation of what there is here. It's going to be 5 elements that are going to get returned. So, I mean, even if I was to say return null, let's just actually console log this. Okay, look how we got 5 nulls. Okay, if I was to return false, like the other array methods, we get falses returned. Whereas in the other array methods, you actually, if you return false, it doesn't get considered in this new array. Okay, so with map, it's important to remember that it's always going to be a one-to-one relationship. Okay, so if you're going to have 5 elements and you only want to have 3 of them get returned, then don't use map. Then you should use filter or you should use reduce, or maybe something else. But you don't want to be using map in those cases. Map is only when you're going to have a one-to-one relationship. Okay, so that's very important. Even if you try and return nothing, if you return like no string, it is still going to be just 4 empty strings. Okay, so it's 5. Okay, so where map can be very useful is one of the examples is in React. You can use it to generate elements or even actually normal HTML. If we were to go and say we want to create an HTML element for these five objects, what we could do is we could say const new element is equal to HTML.create document.create element, and then we can say div, and then we can say new element dot inner text is equal to our element dot first name. Okay, and then I'm going to just, we just actually console log our array at the end. Just give me a second. And then we need to return our new element. Yeah, so now we've actually gone and actually created a bunch of actual divs for each of these elements in here. And then you could go and render these elements to a container. Okay, so it's really good for taking information and mapping it for the exact number of elements that you've got. So yeah, we had five different elements. Each has got a first name. And yeah, we've used those 5 elements to create. So we've used these 5 objects to create 5 different elements as HTML. You could also have it that maybe these could be sums. So let's say that you actually want to go and we're just going to have to just do this like mock. Just bear with me. Okay, so each one's got a mark. So what we could do now is we could go and say return. Just bear with me, I'm trying to think of the right way to do this. We can say return elements dot mark plus 50. So say everybody was going to get 3 marks, each would like get 50 marks added to their current mark, and we save it. So now we've gone and we've got everybody's now got 70. Okay, let me zoom it in a tiny bit. Okay, so we've now bumped everybody up. Let me make it a little bit different so that it just looks better. Okay, so everybody's had 50 added onto their mark. Okay, but what's important here is that it's always a one-to-one relationship. Get used to using map. It's very, very useful, especially when I showed you when you create divs. That is how you, like in React, you use it all the time. And you can always chain things. I'll have a look at chaining things a little bit later. Okay, so we've got a map here. Now, Christopher asked about destructuring. So what I do recommend is destructuring in your array methods. So before we jump into that, let's have a look quickly at how we can destructure. So if we were to take this first object here and just say const student is equal to that. Okay, so this is an object, right? Actually, I want to change this. Sorry, I've got something here. Hold on, where is it? Ola person. Oh, it's in my VM. Sorry, it's not on this one. It's in my VM. Okay, so let's just do it anyways, like this. And then just say is admin is false, and just go with the age of 40. Okay, so we've got a person object here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to move this to a new script so that it's not as confusing, and then we'll bring the stuff back in a moment. Okay, so we've got a person object like this. Now, if we were to go and sort of get values out of this person, I'm going to go quickly through this because we did do it last time and I don't want to take up too much time. If we want to get this value from person, this first name value, we say person.first name. Okay. But this is long-winded because if we need to get every single property out of this object, we need to go and write it out each time. So now it needs to be, needs to be last name. Then we need to have is admin. And then lastly, we need age is equal to person.age. Now this is just, it's so redundant. And redundant means that you're doing like things, you're doing too many of a certain thing. So this is just, it's very long-winded to do this. And if you needed to go and change person, it's a bit of a pain to go and change it. Like if I change this to person 1, we need to now go and change all of these to person 1. And there are easy ways to do it like that. And to be honest, the right way to do this, if you just go and push F2, you just change it to person 1, it will change everywhere. But you know, the point still remains though, that it's a pain. You've made it so that you don't have one source of truth. You've got multiple places. And if there was another person like this, person 1, and if this became person 1, are you going to know that this is now this other object? You know, there's room for error there, and you want to eliminate room for error. Okay, so what we could instead do is destructure. Okay, and it's just basically taking these keys out of this object in one line. Maybe it does span over more than one line, but it's to try and do it in one line of code. Okay, so here's the way I like to think about it: is you create a box. Okay, and all your things are going to go in this box, and then you go equal person. Okay, now TypeScript is running in the background for VS Code. So it's smart. It's going to know that this is actually linked up. So if I go here and I push Control Spacebar, I can see all of these properties, right? These are the properties you have from the actual person object. So I can say first name, last name is admin, age. I have to delete these because now we've got duplicate variable names. These are variables that I've created, and these are also variables. So I need to delete these. There you go. Okay. So actually, let's take those other ones back and just comment them out instead. So you can see here, this is 4 lines of code. Now this is 1 line of code. And it might look a bit foreign to you right now, but you get used to it very quickly. After you practice using it over and over, you're going to want to always use it like this. And yeah, it's just way more useful to do it like this. If you find that you don't actually want to use a name that you had to get from the object, then you could maybe make it just name, whatever you want to call it, their first name. So this is an alias. So you can go and actually use a different, name for that variable. Like the first time you actually pull out of the object, it needs to be the actual exact key because it's pulling it up by a key. Okay. But then you can use an alias to rename that key. So where this is usually a thing is that you might have like a way to get data. So something like fetch data. And then what you end up getting is something like a data value back. You know, you will have a pattern so that whenever you have a hook or something like this, whenever you have a function, you're always returning a variable called data that's got your data. But this might be like fetch user data. And then you might have one that is fetch what is it? Fetch student data. Okay, so fetch admin data and fetch student data. Okay, so one fetches admin data and one fetches student data, but they both will return data. So where this is useful is you're going to say admin data, and this is student data. So if you're able to sort of pull this off like in a interview question and all of that, and they give you code where you sort of have a case like this, I highly recommend doing it because it's just super pro. It's like next level code. Okay, cool. So yeah, so you've asked also like showcase and explain why we do this. Yeah, so the reason why you do this is it just makes your code a lot neater. So this is our first basic example. I'm going to get rid of this. Let's call this. Let's go back to this one. The reason why I'm naming my files like this is so that I don't have to change the imports in my HTML file. Okay, so we're back to this now. So over here, where we've got elements, we could destructure right here. Okay, we could actually open our box. And actually, before I jump to this step, let me do this. Okay, we can create a function here that say takes in this person object, right? So we'll say greet person. I know this is probably, I want to trying to think of what I can do to actually not make it sort of clutter up the page. Okay, because I still want you to be able to see it though when we're working on it later. Okay, so we'll just go and work with this over here. Okay, so we've got this greet person, and then we will console log hello first name. Yep. And then we will actually pass in first name to this. We'll pass in this person object into this greet person. So we'll say greet person, person. Okay. And then we're getting our person object coming in here. So now for us to get this first name, we need to say const first name. So you got a person dot first name. And then we got hello Ola. Okay. Right. So that's working. Okay. So we've got a function here that we pass in this person object. So when we call the function over here with this person, we're passing in this person object. Then inside of this function, we're grabbing the first name key or the first name property from this person object. Okay. Now, this is how you would normally do it. But now what you can actually do is you can actually destructure right here. So, okay, this is how you could first destructure it. You could first go and say, you could first destructure like this. You could say const first name is equal to person. Okay, so now we've destructured here. Okay, but you can go next level with this. What you can do is you can destructure right here as the parameter that's coming in. Okay, so this is a very common pattern you'll see in React and other places as well. Array methods, you're going to see this all the time. So this is another way you could destructure like this. There are some downsides that if the property doesn't exist, you might throw an error, but generally with TypeScript and that, you're not going to have that problem. So it's not really such a big issue. Okay, so using this, what we've looked at here, we can actually go and use this in our array methods. So over here, remember we've got this. I'm gonna take that out and that. Okay, so now we're back to where we were. Okay, so over here we've got this element, which is actually one of these students here. This isn't the right way to name the stuff, by the way. You should actually name it based on what it's going to be. So we should probably have this as student and use that. But in this case, I want to try and sort of just show you that it's the element that we're mapping through. If I just hovered over this, and you can even see that because of TypeScript, it can even tell you what the dot is that's coming through. But anyway, so back to that function where we destructured the value right as a parameter. We can do that here. So we could first do this. We could first say const, and we have our box, and we say is equal to element, and then in our box we put our stuff. Okay, so there's first name, ID, mark. Okay, so that's first name, ID, and mark. Actually put ID to the front so that it's just the same. Okay, and then we can return mark plus 50. Okay, so we've destructured here. Okay, so that's made a lot easier than us saying const ID is equal to element.id. Now what you could instead do is destructure right where this element is. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here. Okay, and now we can take that out. And now it's exactly the same. It's still going to work. Yeah, you can see it's working here. Just as more proof, I'll show you. I can just say console log first name, and console log ID. Okay, so you can see it's still actually working. So this becomes very, very helpful. In this case, I'll show you what is usually happens is that you won't even use the index in the array, and let's take that out, and then we don't even need that. And let's say we don't even need those two. Now look at how clean this is going to be. You know, it's a really, really clean set of code. You can even take this further in that your arrow functions have got an implicit return. Okay, I don't like these fancy words like this. They threw me off. I was too scared to learn about them because I was like, who's going to use words like implicit and explicit? So implicit means it's built in. Okay, like don't look at how this is like a complicated word. It just means implicit means it's built in, and explicit means we have to write it. Okay, or we have to write it, we have to do it. Okay. So when I say there's an implicit return, it means that there's actually a hidden return right after the arrow here. You see, it doesn't like that I'm writing this here, but there is actually a hidden return right after this arrow. We're not getting use of it here because we're using these curly braces. As soon as you put the curly braces, then it's returning the whole object. Don't worry about that. The main thing is that if you have curly braces, it's not using the implicit return. So if I take this out, these curly braces, and then if I delete this return here, and I need to get rid of that, and I save, this is hidden away, got a return here, like that. So it's saying return mark plus 50. So this is called an implicit return. So now this is actually, just do 3 here. This is now, this original one refactored down to something really basic. And if we named our variables correctly, if I actually called this students, okay, so I used F2 to change it throughout the code. So now our original array is called students, okay? This over here, it's called students. When we're mapping now, it's actually very intuitive. We can say, if we name this correctly, we call this like adjusted marks is equal students.map, and then we take the mark and we put mark plus 50. So it should be adjusted. So to me, this is really understandable. It's very, I don't even need to have comments to explain what this code is doing. I can look at this and I know exactly what's happening. I know my new array is going to be adjusted marks, so it's marks that have been adjusted. Then when we're mapping through students, we know we're mapping through students and we're getting a mark. Like why would we get a mark from the students? It's only, it's their results, their marks. And then we're adding 50 on. Okay, this part doesn't make sense. Why would we just add 50? But the rest of it, to me, it becomes very, very clean. So this is why I would say is one of the positive reasons as to why we destructure, is that it allows us to write our code more concisely. Okay. Right. So about 40 minutes in, but I think we'll probably go like probably one and a half hours to 2 hours. If you need to go, feel free to drop out. When I share the video, I will try and segment, like I'll sort of use YouTube to show what the different parts are on the video. Okay, so we've looked at map here, and for each. So I'm going to grab those. I'm just going to create a new script here. Actually, what we'll do is duplicate that, and then we'll just take out the other stuff we don't want. Okay, so just want to add the example where we aren't destructuring student, and then we'll return student.mark. So just marks 1. Okay, so let's have it like that. I just want you to have sort of both these sort of ways to look at it so that you can digest all of it. Okay, so that was map over here, and map 1-to-1, 1-to-1 relationships. Okay, so remember, it's 1-to-1. It has to be 1-to-1. Like if you only want 2 elements, then we're not using map. Only for 1-to-1. Let's actually write that as well. Only for 1-to-1 relationships. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is filter. Okay, filter is probably one of the coolest ones there are. And filter is now probably the one that you're going to need to be using a lot of the time when you need to sort of start taking things out. Okay, so in this case, what filter allows you to do is it filters out things we don't want. We do and don't want. I guess filters out the things we want. Filters out. So it's not really accurate when I say it like this, but it really is what it does at the end of the day. And the way that filter works is that if we return true, it stays. And if we return false, it's not included. Okay, so I'm actually not going to say it stays because that gives the impression that it actually stays in the original array. So it is included in new array, and it is not included in new array. Okay, so remember that when we're using our array methods, we're going to be getting a new array that we're dealing with afterwards. Okay, that's the most important thing, because we don't want to be mutating this original set of data. If we're filtering, and if we ended up messing with this data here, then all of our other array methods that use this original data will stop working. They will no longer work, because now they might maybe only have one result left over. So it's important that these array methods are returning a new array, so that we don't mutate our original array. So let's look at how this works. So we're going to go and say const filtered students is equal to students.filter. And now we've got our exact same pattern as earlier. Okay, we've got our element. So let me put it in brackets. We've got our element, we've got our index, we've got our array. And then there's another argument there, but we're not going to discuss that. And then I'm going to put it in an arrow function. Remember, you could also have it as a normal function, but I recommend, like at this stage, you should really be getting comfortable with array functions in your array methods. Sorry, you should be getting used to your arrow functions in your array methods. You don't have to go and use arrow functions everywhere, but in your array methods, which is map, filter, like anything that you do dot. So some of you might not know what an array method is. If you have an array, okay, so it's like an array of data like this. And if you push dot, you get all these methods, but they are only available on an array, nowhere else. It's not available on an object. It's not available on a number or on a string. It's only available on an array. So I'll give you more examples here, because I know that did catch some students out. So I want to say const my string is equal to hello world. Yeah. Now this is a string data type. Okay. Whereas this is an array data type. So now if I say my string and say dot, now I've got these string methods. So these are methods that only work on a string. Like, for example, 2 uppercase, and then there's 2 lowercase over here. Where is it? It's right at the top. Yeah. Okay, so 2 lowercase. These aren't available on an array. Some of them might be the same. You know, like I know you get includes in a string and you get in an array method, and I think you might even get, no, I don't think you get index of. But the main point is that these are separate methods that are available for that data type. Okay, so these are available for a string. If I was to take a number, so const my number, and then I also say my number and say dot, here are now number methods. So now we can make it like, it can have like 2 fixed, we'll add decimal spaces. So maybe 2 decimal spaces if you say dot 2 fixed 2. So these are number array methods. Okay, so each data type has got its own set of methods. Okay, so moving on from here. So what I was saying is that when it comes to your array methods, which are these methods that come after an array, you should be using an arrow function here. Like at this point in time in the course, I would like for you to see, I wouldn't mark you down. I'll probably make a suggestion. I don't think I'd be deducting any marks here, but at this stage, you really should. Like what I want is I want you to be able to get employed. And if you're not using array methods, I mean, your arrow functions in your array methods, it just doesn't come across as skilled as a person who is using it. So for your own benefit, I really suggest using it like this. If you don't know how to use arrow functions yet, then you can just practice. Basically, just create a function like this, example, and then return 10. And then just learn to convert it. And it's really simple. In this case, what you need to do is you need to write const instead of the function. And then you need to go and say equal to the brackets, and then you have the arrow afterwards. Okay. And you practice that a few times, and it becomes second nature. And then this way of is a lot easier when you do it over here, because you would just have a function, because it's an anonymous function. You just have a function like this, and you just take out the function keyword and you add the arrow. Yeah, with a bit of practice, I promise you it's going to be second nature, and then you're going to be like, oh, why didn't I do this in the beginning? Yeah, so we've got our array filter method. So this is now the array filter method. It's for taking, we're going to create a new array, and then if we return true, that element is going to get added to that new array. And if we return false, it's not going to be added. Okay, so if we return true, remember that it's going to loop through each element. So we'll go through element 1. So we'll go Oliver. Then it goes element 2, Fitwi. Then Carla, then Marianne, and then Ola. Now, if you return true here, then the element stays in this filtered students or it gets added to it. And if you return false, it gets excluded. It doesn't get added. Okay. So what we can do here is we can say if I'm actually going to change this now to student because you should understand now that this is element, index, and array. But it's better that we actually give it a meaningful name. You can give us any name you want. Over here, we're filtering through students, so it makes sense that it's going to be called student. Okay, so we can check here. If student.mark is greater than equal to 40, we return true. Else, we return false. Okay, so I'm going to log filter students. Okay, so now we're going to open this up, and there you can see our students. Trying to think how I can get to show the marks. So I have to just open them all up. Okay, so we are filtering students that are greater than equal to 40. So if their mark, this mark over here, is greater than equal to 40, we're returning true. And that means that this student will get added to this new filtered students array. If their mark is less than 40, it's going to return false, and then they're not going to be added in this array. Okay, so if we want to keep it or we want to add it in, we return true. And if we don't want it, we return false. Okay. Now, the way I've written this out here isn't ideal. This is the most basic way you can write this out, but it is not ideal. The first thing is that, and this is going to apply to all of your code whenever there's a return. When there's a return, we don't need to use an else. It's automatically going to go to the next thing. So for example, over here, I take, actually, let's duplicate it so we can do a comparison here. If I take out this else and then save this. Okay, so now this first one's going to run. If student mark is greater than equal to 40, it returns true and it breaks out of this array or out of this specific loop. It breaks out of it. Okay, over here, when it reaches this, it's going to break out of it as well. So you don't need to actually do an else check. You just need to go and check if so-and-so, it's going to return true. And if it is returning true, it's just going to break out of it. We don't have to have this else here. The reason why you'd normally have an else is that you don't want both segments of code to run. So I'll give you an example. If we set something like let count equal to 10, or sorry, equal to 0, then if mark was so-and-so, we would say count plus plus. So that adds 1 to count, and this would do count minus minus, and that's going to take 1 away from count. So the reason why you want an else here is so that both of these sections of code don't run. If you were to take the else out of this and save it, this is going to run and this is going to run. Okay, they will both run if it's greater than 40. Just undo a lot of this. Whereas over here, because we're returning, it's going to break out of this and we will never be able to get to the situation. Okay, so this is sort of considered a cleaner way of writing your code. And if you're using ESLint, it's going to complain about this. So just remember this. If it's complaining about this, when you're using ESLint, this is what it's going to want you to do. Okay, so that's the first refactor we can do. Now, the next thing we can look at is we can make this a lot better. When it comes to conditionals like this, let's actually do a new page for this one. Okay, this is a conditional. This will always evaluate to true or false. Always, always, always. Okay, so this always evaluates to true or false. It doesn't matter if it is a string, something like name is equal to Oliver. It doesn't matter if it was, what is something else? Array.length is greater than 0. All of this will always evaluate to true or false, no matter what. It's always going to evaluate. So say this one evaluates, it's going to become true. Okay. If you had multiple conditions, student.isAdmin. Okay. This as well is also going to evaluate to true or false. It will just evaluate different parts, and then it will eventually break down to either being true or false. This is a little bit more complex. I'm not going to go into this right now. But the main thing is that this is going to eventually evaluate down to either being true or false. Okay, no matter what conditional you're looking at, it is always going to evaluate to true or false. This is going to evaluate to true or false. This is going to evaluate to true or false. Always, these conditionals are always going to evaluate to true or false, no matter what. Okay, so the reason why that is important is that if this is always going to evaluate to true or false, we don't need to say return true or false. We just need to return this. So I'll give you an example here, is that if we return this part here, so if we return this conditional check here, this is going to evaluate to either true or false. So it's saying it's either going to be returned true or it's going to be returned false. Okay. This is a really cool way to refactor it. Like if you compare all of that code to just having this, and I know when you're looking at it now, you might still be like, whoa, I don't really get this yet right now. That's fine. That's fine. But be aware of this and keep practicing this, like trying to refactor it like this. Like the main thing is to refactor away this else. You should not have the else here. That you should definitely not have. And then the next step is that to show that you have the knowledge to understand that this is going to evaluate a true or false. And then you're going to return this evaluation because this is going to evaluate to either true or false. Okay. So this is not doing the exact same. This is still going to work. Let me actually just save it. And you see there's still the same 3 students. Okay. So yeah, be aware of that. This condition is always going to be evaluating to true or false. I'm going to take this out so it's shorter. We're not using the index and array. And if you aren't aware, I find that some students still aren't aware, you can see that this is dimmed. The color of this is dimmed out, where this is a brighter color. That means that your variable is not getting used. Okay, so if I hover over this, it says index is declared, but its value is never read. That's just a fancy way of saying we've created this variable and we're not using it. And this is bad. This means that you haven't cleaned up your code. If you submit in the real world, your code, it's going to fail. It's going to fail all the pipelines, which are the different code checks, and it's going to throw an error because you've left unused code in here that should not be there. It makes the person think that maybe you forgot to do something. So to show you what happens now when I use it, I'm just going to say console log index, and you'll see that as soon as I write index, it's going to brighten up. So I'm just going to write index here, and then it's now brightened again. Okay. If I take index out, it's dimmed. Okay, because it's using TypeScript to basically figure all the stuff out. So yeah, you should not leave stuff in your code that's unused like this. This is bad, like bad craftsmanship. You know, you must sort of try to take a lot of pride in the work that you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to take that out. We're not using it. And yeah, we're going to do the last set of refactoring we can do here. Remember, we spoke about this implicit return. It's gone now, but there's an implicit return, right? So we don't actually have to have all of this stuff over here. So I can take out the curly braces and I can take out the return. And I save it. I also have to take out the colon at the end, semicolon, and save it. And there we go. Okay, so now we've taken this and refactored it. Actually, to make it fair, there shouldn't be either. Okay, so we've taken this 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is someone at the door. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines of code down to 1 line of code. Okay. And in this case, I mean, I don't know if you can make sense of this. To me, I can see that it's filtered students. Sure. Maybe we should actually call it filtered by mark. And then we write students dot filter, and we're filtering a student, and then we're filtering by their mark being greater than or equal to 40. So this is readable. I don't need to go and write a comment here below we filter by student mark. Like this is redundant. You know, and this is now, you've actually added a lot more maintenance because in the future, when you change your code here and say we filter by student name instead, you now have to go and change your comments. So comments are like they're living, breathing code as well. Your comments have to reflect your code itself. Otherwise, they're actually no good at all. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that is filtering. Are there any questions about filtering? No. Okay. Right. So we're going to move now on to reduce. I'm just trying to think, like, I think this is sort of a practical example here. So I don't think I need to give you an actual practical example. So this is filter. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to change this up, change this to products. And I have to just get rid of all of it. Okay, and then we're going to have name and price. Okay, so we're going to have different products here. Pricing is going to be completely out, like it's not going to be correct, but let's just go with it. Cheese and bread, and what is the last thing? Chicken. No. Tomato. Okay, so we've got all the different prices here. Prices aren't going to be accurate. Just forgive it. That's really expensive chocolate. Let's do like crazy expensive cheese. And then just normal bread, like 5, and then a tomato, $2.99. Okay, so we've got an insane amount of stuff here. Now let's look at what reduce does. Okay, so we start off once again with a variable. So let's just say reduced value. And then we're going to say our array dot reduce. Okay. Now, reduce is the one different thing that there is when it comes to the array methods. All of them, when we looked at previously, we had element, index, and array. Okay. Now, reduce is the same type of thing. Hold on, let me just actually fix it up. Okay. So we've got element. Made a mistake there. Okay. So we've got element, index, and array, right? So that's like the other array methods. However, reduce is the one that is different. It's the one element that is, sorry, the one array method that is actually different. And at the front here, what we've got is an accumulator. Don't really like that word that they use for it, but I think that is what they call it. Okay, so we've got this accumulator. I prefer to usually call this a total. Depends on, I guess, on your use cases. But I think in the MDN docs, they call it previous value. If I remember correctly. I have to just hide that away for a moment. No, that's not good. Okay, so reduce has got this previous value. And what it means is that each time this loops, this previous value is going to be available for you to do something with it. Okay, so where it's really useful is that, for example, if you've got a set of numbers, you can go and reduce these numbers down to one value. Okay, so the reduce array method has got one value that is getting added every single time it's iterating, and you can do something with that value. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that in a moment, but I first want to just mention about some things about it, is that even though it's one value that's getting returned each time, or sorry, getting sort of looped over and we can use it, that value can be a complex object or like an array, because those are still one value at the end of the day. So you can use this to actually build new arrays and build new objects and do kinds of like magical things. When it comes to reduce, the people that are really, really amazing with JavaScript, they use reduce to do some really, really sort of imaginative, like crazy things with reduce. Like you could do so many things with it, and you really are limited by your imagination. Okay, so let's sort of look at how we do this. Trying to think if I should do the initial value first. No, okay. So what you've got is this previous value, and each time you're looping, you need to return this previous value. You have to do this. Every single time you're doing this, you are returning this previous value. And then right at the end, this reduced value will be this previous value once it's finished looping through everything. Now, in this case, when we console log previous value, we've got 5 elements here, but you can see that we've actually only got 4 elements that are actually, when we're looping, that's going to be a bad way to explain this. Sorry, let me actually take another approach. Okay, so with our reduce, there is an initial value over here. Okay, so this is what makes it different to the other ones, is that it's got this previous value, and right at the end, you've got your first sort of parameter here in the callback, and then you've got another value here. And this value is your initial value. So what is this previous value going to start off with? Okay, so let's just say 0 is the initial previous value. Okay, so 0 is the initial previous value. I know that's like a bit of a tongue twister, But yeah, bear with me. It will eventually start making sense. And yeah, then you'll actually learn to love it. So when we start looping now through this, initial value is going to start at 0. Okay. Let's just do this console log previous value. Okay, so you can see that when we first start logging, when we log previous value, it starts off at 0. Okay, because we've set it here. If you don't set previous value, then it's going to first get set to your first element. Okay, so if I save it here, you can see that it's our first element that's actually getting saved here. Okay, so our first element, if we don't include an initial value, it sets it to the first element. And that is useful in some cases to stop this from throwing errors, but 99.9% of the time, you really should put an initial value so that there's no problems that are actually happening. Okay, so that's something to be aware of, is that if you set an initial value, then it's no longer going to have this as the first value. But if you don't set an initial value, it's going to count this one as your first value, and then it's only going to loop 4 times for these elements. Okay, whereas if you didn't include it, sorry, if you did include it, it's actually going to loop 5 times. So you can see we're actually looping 5 times. If I take it out, it's actually only looping 4 times. And that's probably a little bit confusing, but it will come. Okay, so we've got our previous value, and now what we want to do is we want to add the price of each item every time we're looping, so that we're reducing all of this down to get our total price. So this will be our total price. Total cost of products. Yeah, and then we're going to console log total cost of products. Save. Okay, so our total cost of products is 0 at the moment. It's actually right here. Okay, total cost is 0. Now, what we can do, let me just fix this for a moment. Just give me a second. So it's the one that's breaking the line there. Okay, it's not breaking the line. Okay, so I'm going to check out this index and array because that's just going to confuse things here. Okay, so we've now got our previous value that's going to be remembered each time we're looping. And then we've also got our current element. So what we're going to say is we're going to say previous value is equal to or plus equal to, actually, let's do it the main way like this. We're going to say previous value is equal to previous value plus element dot price. And then we're going to save. Okay, so now you can see that when let me actually make the logging a bit clearer. Just give me a second. Okay, so we've now got that when we loop, we can see our previous value is 0 and our current price that's coming in is $9.99. Okay, so we added to this 0 that we've got. So then the next time it loops, our previous value is now at $9.99 because we added this first element, we added that first price, and our next price that we need to add is now $219.99. Okay, and then we go and we add it again. We add the $219.99 to it. Okay, so the next time we loop, our total is now $229.98. So it's these two prices that have been added. And the next price we need to add is our $1,000 cheese. So we go and we add our $1,000 cheese. And now we've got this 1249.97. And then the last loop, it needs to add on this $2.99. And we now have got 128.95. Okay, so this is a very, very efficient way of reducing things down to a single value. We've reduced all of these prices down to a single value. Okay, so that's incredibly useful. Like I really recommend trying to learn how to use reduce. It is the hardest of them. It's the hardest to understand. And people are very scared of it and sort of rightly so, because it is a bit scary to work with. But it's incredibly, incredibly helpful. Okay, so we're not done with reduce. I want to show you sort of some other tricks here. So the next thing I'm going to have a look at here is why this initial value is sort of an important thing. Okay. remember I mentioned that when we're working with reduce, it doesn't have to be a number or like a single value, like a string or like, sort of a number like this or string. We could have this as a complex, like an object. So then we can actually end up building a very sort of complex thing when we're actually returning. So let me keep this as it is here. So we've just still got this. And then we'll create something called like product object, which is not the right way to name it, but let's just stick with it, product object. Okay, so now what I actually want to do is I'm actually going to take that all out. We're just going to return previous value. And what I'd like to do is actually build one object that has got the name as the key and then the price. Okay, so it'll basically look like this. It'll be like milk, and then it'll just be 9.99. Okay, so it'll be like this. There are use cases for like this when you want to use it sort of as a lookup table or like a dictionary. This is where it becomes useful. When I say lookup table, I mean that if you want to access a value, you just want to say something like product and then milk. Like that, or product.milk. You might want to do that because usually when you got dynamic data, then it's easier to go and reference things like that with a lookup table. And it also makes your sort of time complexity a lot lower. Okay, so we're going to try and create this object here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start off with an object. So I'll actually say empty object is the initial previous value. And I'm going to have to just comment that out. Okay, and call product object. Okay, so you can see we've got product object is this empty object. Okay, now what we can do now is we can actually say previous value dot actually inside here we say element dot name is equal to element dot price, and then we can save that. Okay, so now what we've got here is a new object, and actually what I want to do is I actually want to do dot to lowercase or uppercase it. That's also fine, but let's do to lowercase. Okay, so now what we've got here is this object that we've created from this array. We've reduced this array down to a single object, and that single object contains these different keys. So he has a bread key with a value, he has a cheese key with a value, and he has a coffee key. Now, if I wanted to, I could go and say console log milk cost. Okay, wait, let's do it like this. I'll show you now why we can use this. So say my product comes through and there's a form, right? So there's an input like this. So we say like input name is equal to milk. Okay, so you got this input like this. And then we were to get this name. So we would say something like const product name is equal to document dot get element by ID. And then we'd also have to have an ID here. So then we maybe have like product name. It's not the right way to do it. You'd probably use like a data. There's the data star attribute, which you'd probably use for this. But I just want to sort of just give it as an example here. So we'd get our element like this, and it'll be product name dash milk. And then what you'd be able to do is you'd be able to get this milk from the name. So you wouldn't even have this. Sorry, you wouldn't even have this. You basically have it that there'd be an event and you'd have current target. And then you'd be able to use event.current target dot name, and you'd be able to pull this milk through. Okay, so then your product name, in this case, imagine we're just skipping that step, we just short circuit this, and we're just going to say product name is equal to milk. So now what you could do is you could go and say console log the cost of product name is, so actually let's make it a string template. So let's take this all out. The cost of product name is, and then we're going to reference this product object, object. And then inside here, we put our product name. We save. Okay, so I think that's messing up with that. And we save that. Okay, so yeah, you can see here. So now we're saying the cost of milk is now 99 because we're using this key, which we used lowercase. It's become this lowercase key to now reference this object that we had. And then we also use it to reference the actual price. Okay, so this is like where you can actually, so there's like a look, this is like a lookup table when it says an object. This object here is like a lookup table. So you could just basically use this key to go and reference it in one-to-one time. Okay, so that's where this can be useful. Like, I mean, this is like quite niche. You won't often need to do something like this, but it's good to sort of expand your mind so you know that you can do these things with reduce. Most of the time, the reduce is used to sort of reduce like a whole bunch of values like this down to one value. Okay. Right, so that's reduce. I don't think I'm going to be looking. Okay, the last one I actually look at is just quickly is find. That's an important one to look at because, yeah. So just give me a second. I guess we'll just save this as script reduce. Going, yeah. And what I just want to find is generate data online. Yeah, I want that. Give it to me. How do we get it? Do I have to do an API call to get this? So I was trying to find a way to generate a ton of data so you can see an actual use case for this. Yeah, JSON generate. Okay. Okay. No. Oh, I should have prepared this beforehand. Sorry. Okay, just ignore this. And we'll just manually just put some stuff in here. Okay, so what I'm gonna have here is I'm gonna have a file that's gonna be called data. Not there though, over here. Data.js. And this is gonna have our data inside of it. So it's just gonna have a ton of data. So it should actually be an array first. Now, actually, what I do is I'll go and jack the student stuff that we had, or even this is fine. Okay, so now imagine we got 1 million of these. And like we're just duplicating. Okay, right. So we've duplicated that. Now in between here, in the middle of nowhere, there is now a product ID of 10. And this is now Pokemon cards, right? And it's, I don't know how much those cost. Let's just do that. Okay, so at 9,072, we've got Pokemon cards. It's going to take a long time to say, but it's fine. So we split down. Okay, so we've got this data here, and it's an insane amount of data. And we're going to go in our script, and we're going to say, well, I haven't exported it, so just give me a second. I don't want to lose my place. So I'm going to have to split this to the right, and then this one I'll go and move up, and then export const. Okay, so now we're going to import this data. Going to probably run into issues when you try and import it. So const is equal to data.js. Yeah, let's console log the data, save. Why is not, what am I missing here? Give me a second. Oh, I'll just go and change it to import because that is part of the lesson, isn't it? I'm still curious though why this didn't work. Syntax is the same. Okay, let's do an import. Okay, so import from data.js, and then we're going to need to go and change some stuff here. So we need to go to here, and we need to say type is equal to module. And it's saying data is not defined. We need to pop it in, we save. There we go. Okay, so there's our data. Okay, so that is part of the lessons, the import, export stuff. But you can see, so now we've got 9,112 things of data. Okay, now if we wanted to get bread, okay, in this case, we want to get bread, right? And yeah, we wanted to find it. So we're going to go and say const bread is equal to data.filter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to filter when the ID is 3, because we're going to say product, and then we're going to say product.id is equal to 3. Okay, so this is now going to filter through all of this data all the way to the end, right, all the way to the end. It's going to go through all of that. Okay, and then this is console log bread, and then what we're also going to do is we're actually going to console log the product and save it. Okay, now this is what's happened here. It has gone through every single record that there is inside of that file, all 9,070 something records that there are. It's my computer's crazy fast, and it's still slugs trying to do this. So this is not good when you need to do this. We only needed to go and actually look at the 4th item, yet we actually kept looping all the way down, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of different things. We kept looping. That is not good. The last array method we're going to look at is what solves this, and that is find or find index. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say find index, sorry, just find, and I'm going to go and save. Actually, wait, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the index here, and we're going to console log the index, and then the product dot name. Okay, so you can see that it's gone and it's logged like thousands of different things. If we were to go and change this to find, oh, it didn't find it, did it? Yeah, so what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to stop as soon as we actually find what we're actually looking for. So let me go and see what I've done. Am I doing this? There, okay. So let's just jump back to this. We do filter. Okay, so when we're doing filter and we're trying to go and log stuff, or we're trying to find it, we did originally find this product ID is equal to 3, and we found that all the way up here at the top, all the way up here at the top. Like, man, that's gonna take me forever to get that to the top. Okay, I'm not even gonna try and get it to the top. It found this right at the top, yet it kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. And that is just, it's a waste. It is going to be really bad for your application. So what you instead do is you use find. Okay, and find is going to go and it's going to run through this. And as soon as we return true, it's going to stop looking. Okay, it's going to stop looking immediately. So yeah, you can see we only went 1, 2, 3, 4, done. It's found it and it's finished. It doesn't need to go look any further. So compare with the last one with filter, we're going still 9,111, even though we've already found our value we're looking for. But then when we change it to filter, sorry, to find, it's going to stop as soon as we actually find it. The other part of this is you get find index. Find index. And it will give you the index of where the element is. So I'm going to save it, and then you can see it's telling us that it's at index 3. And then you could use index 3 to go and access this in some way. So the main sort of takeaway from this though is that find and find index will run until it finds the thing you're looking for, and then it stops. So if you're going to be going and working through like thousands of records or whatever, don't use filter. Rather use find or find index if you're looking for something. And if you're trying to find the value, then the whole object, we use find, because then it's going to give you this whole object like this. And if you want to find the index, then you would go and find index. Okay, so that's important to note. So we've been sort of going for about an hour and 20 minutes. Are there any questions regarding the array methods? Anyone? No questions? Okay, then I think we're going to be wrapping this up here. So I thought there might be some questions coming through. This weekend, I'll be working on the JS2 videos, so don't worry about that. I know a lot of you are sort of like worried about how to do the certain things. So I'm hoping that in the videos, we'll at least sort of break down like what you need to do for this and what you need to do for that. But I can't just give you the answers. So I'm trying, it's a bit of a complex one to sort of try and figure out and provide for you. But I will have those videos done for you so you don't have to freak out too much. Okay. Right, everyone. I hope the session was useful. And I'm sorry I couldn't have it at 11 o'clock earlier. I had a really important meeting that I'd attend. But in the future, I'll make sure that I don't have to reschedule. Okay, great. So you all have a great weekend. And if there's any other questions, I'm still tutoring. So if there's any other questions, just feel free to reach out to me and I'll jump on it. Okay, great. Right, and have a great weekend.